just started it, so you'll be ready to go here in just a second.
Okay, did we hear from Bobby?
I did not. Okay, you're live.
Do we want to wait a minute?
6 o'clock.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
I was looking at the clock.
Oh, yeah, don't look at our clocks.
I'll call the November 30th, 2022 Millwood Planning Commission meeting to order. We'll start off with a roll call. Commissioner Rickard.
Here.
Commissioner Beasy. Commissioner Molitor.
Here.
Commissioner Wu.
Present.
And Chairman Ankney's present also. So 4 of the 5 are here. We do have a quorum.
Oh, there she goes.
Okay. And Commissioner Beasy.
Present.
Present? So
Present.
all 5 members are in attendance, and so we do have a quorum. Thank you. We'll take a second here to let her get settled in.
Some people don't shovel their sidewalks.
I shoveled mine today, Bobby.
A lot did, but a lot didn't too.
I tried to shovel the 2-foot berm that the Millwood city plow put in front of my driveway.
I'll let the guys know, Jay, and then we just won't plow Riverway anymore. And you
I
can
think-
deal with the
I
neighbors.
think they were picking on me because they backed up and did it a couple of times, both of them.
All right, so the first order of business is approval of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Okay, a second, please.
Second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, next order of business would be approval of the planning commission meetings from the October 26th, 2022 meeting. I looked them over, I didn't see anything that was out of line. So I'd like to commend the staff for getting my last name spelled right every time this time.
Got it fixed on
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else on the minutes?
I have a question about the minutes.
Okay, and your question?
On item number 1, does Christina actually call the meeting to order?
You know, that's
I do not.
a good catch.
Yeah.
All right, I'll fix that.
Okay,
And they did.
And that was a question, I didn't actually know the answer, so.
Right.
Oh, no, I don't.
no,
Mike
that
does.
Mike does. So,
She
yeah.
does the
Tells us to.
planning, or the council. Well, no, Kevin does that too.
Yeah, no, do that, no, don't you?
Okay.
I don't know.
So I would look to a motion to approve the minutes with the one edit. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, perfect. Motion carried. Okay. That brings us to the, excuse me, number 5 action items. And I guess we'll turn the Millwood Park Master Plan Study Session over to Christina.
Thank you. So I want to apologize ahead of time. My computers aren't speaking to the TVs tonight, so I can't bring stuff up on the screen, which is what I intended to do. But I did bring our most recent board up, so we do have a point of reference there on what the plan is looking like. So just to refresh your memories from our October meeting, I went through all of the information that we gathered through the summer at the farmers markets, as well as Millwood Days with regard to the park plan. And we talked quickly about some of the must-haves in the park, including the playground, the water feature, sport court, and event space. We looked at the drawing. We talked a little bit about the configuration of the proposed tennis courts. And then at the end of our meeting, we had a couple of outstanding items when we left. One of them was talk about possibly establishing a theme for the park. We needed to look at the water feature, and we had, through our discussion, I was asked to try and put together a survey and gather some more information on that. We had a question about whether we wanted to include basketball at all, and then how we were going to handle the pickleball versus tennis. So I had my marching orders when we left, and this is stuff I was going to bring up on the screen, but I can't, so I printed it out for you. So I believe the day after our meeting, I went into an application called SurveyMonkey, and it allows you to create surveys for anything that you want to, and then distribute that electronically. So with our questions that we had remaining at the end of our last meeting, I just made a quick 3-question survey. I wasn't sure what to expect as far as participation. So I put the survey out on the city's website, and then I put it out also on all of our social media sites. And in the end, I closed it down today, 32 total responses. I teased it one more time. Everything that I've been doing and everything that was on my plate took a hit with the water situation. So, but I kept the survey open, and I did put out social media blurbs to please go take our quick survey. So 32 respondents is what we got. So I'll just run through those real quick with you, and then we can kind of take our discussion from there. So the first one would be the first page on the top of your packet. Looks like this. This was the wading pool versus splash pad question. The question that I put out there was, a new park design would include a water feature for children. Which of the following water features would you prefer? And you can see that the splash pad came out way ahead.
Okay, I have a question about that. What point, when we started this process, we were talking about both. At what point did the decision get made that it became an either or?
I don't know that a decision did come in that way. And I'm not sure that we couldn't.
Question was asked either or.
Okay, well, I'm not putting it out again. So if,
I'm just saying that this could be, well, personally, if I had to choose, I'd choose the splash pad because it serves a wider range of people.
sure.
But that doesn't mean the wading pool's a bad idea. It doesn't mean people don't want the wading pool.
Well, I mean,
I'm just saying this is really limited for me in determining what people want. Just because of the way the question was asked, that's all.
well, I did it that way intentionally because I didn't want to come back to you all and have it look as if I had worded anything that might sway a person reading it one way or the other, or be able to be interpreted that way. So, I mean, there's a lot of intricacies to a wading pool that have nothing to do with what the public wants. So, I mean, anything more than this, I don't know how I would get any more than this. And I don't know how many times we can go out for comment on this. I think 32 responses is fine. I also think 32 responses isn't much. So not knowing what to expect, I can tell you that we also did a survey on the logoing. You guys all got that.
On the what?
The logo, and it had a comparable return on comments.
I had a question on that too, as to how you decided who would get that.
Okay, let's talk about that during my comments. I'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just have a quick comment on this, Bobby. What I like about this is, right now, even if we're considering both options, but if we come up with some budget constraints and something's got to go, this helps us make that decision, just FYI. Okay? Because people are saying they do prefer a splash pad. Currently, we have both.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
so, and if our park master plan says that, but due to, we can't see the foreseeable financial future, this gives us an idea, okay, hey, something, we have to cut something out of the budget. Well, this gives us a clearer, concise of what could be cut. So, just
Yeah. I
FYI,
mean,
that's how I look at it.
I'd almost look at it as, even though it serves a very limited range of ages, a fair percentage of these people still wanted the wading pool, even if it meant no splash pad. That's pretty incredible. So it's kind of in how you read them. But, I mean, it is useful, it is data.
Sure. Okay, so that was the first question. The second question is the larger table that you have. Considering a theme for the park, it would be carried throughout the park in play equipment, water feature, et cetera. If you have an idea, I said that we had talked about railroad or paper mill. Please enter it below. You can read through these if you'd like. What I can tell you is that overwhelmingly railroad was the one that was mentioned the most, but I thought there were some other good ideas. And there were some comments that maybe weren't germane to the discussion. But there was some mention of farms or apple farms of the past, historical community, Tree City, community heritage. I don't know what any of those look like. It's really easy to picture a railroad, railroad equipment. But I'm sure that these all have been done in some iteration somewhere. So I would defer to our consultant if we chose one, So you can look through those, but railroad and river, but railroad more so than river. And then the last question, I said of the following, what type of sport court would you be most likely to use? And I have to tell you, for a fair amount of time, basketball was winning. And as you remember, in our first drawings of the park, we didn't have basketball because I didn't think that that was something that was used a lot. But tennis and basketball were the winners for a long time, and then pickleball really shot up there. So I think it's pretty safe to say, based on this, that we can't go without the basketball court. So a couple other things that I just want to say. I want to draw your attention to this comment that was received from a citizen regarding the tennis and pickleball. That's the third one. You had two at your last meeting. A lot of the talk about, in this email and in the others, was about the layout of the courts and about the layout of the courts. So we talked, one of the comments last meeting was that the way that the courts are the brown square on the left of the board, that tennis courts should be north-south, that has something to do with the sun. And that was what the mayor preferred anyway, so we were gonna, swing that a little bit. So I just want to revisit a comment that I made at our last meeting and just bring it back to the forefront of your mind. This is a small community park. It's not a facility for any one or two activities. We are trying to provide the widest range of spaces and opportunities as we can. I believe in one of the emails last month and in this month, there was a comment made about you need to separate pickleball and tennis. You can't have them on the same courts. They need to be separated. And I had a verbal comment from someone who told me, just move the tennis courts down to the east end. And so I don't even play tennis, but I'm a little offended by the way we're banishing them across the park. I want to let you know that that is not really a viable option. That space at the end of the park with the trail that will accommodate car shows and farmers markets and other types of events is important and special, and we're not going to drop a tennis court in the middle of it just so that we can, separate that. So it may come down to providing fewer courts for pickleball because, this outlines lots of courtside area for bench for those waiting to play, and that's not really what we're doing. We've got a finite amount of space, and it's not meant to be a facility to hold tournaments or things like that.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can you not overlay pickleball courts on the tennis courts like you do now?
You can, if you read her comments, she says, and I'll readily admit, I don't know anything about it, that really the maximum amount of pickleball, so the way that it was drawn had multiple pickleball courts on one tennis court. And this says, I'm not suggesting that she's an authority necessarily, but it says it's not uncommon to have one pickleball court overlay one tennis court, but that would be the maximum
That's
amount.
what I would think.
So
Yeah.
They were talking about having two sideways, and you had to bring your own net and put the net in if you
Oh,
want to play
no.
pickleball. and
I
That
don't,
was kind of,
I think that would be too much, but.
she talks about something else here, something about changing out here, she says, the lines and the height of net for each sport are not compatible. This makes for too many lines on the court, making play difficult. And changing out nets is unrealistic for a public park setting. And I agree, because I can tell you right now, my guys aren't going to climb down off their snowplows to go switch out your pickleball net. They're just not going to do that, or their excavators or whatever. So we are tasked with figuring out how to make it work. And it may mean we end up with fewer courts from the sounds of it. We're either going to have, it may mean that we end up with fewer courts. The last thing that I want to talk to you about is,
Fewer than what?
Are those tennis courts? Is there
those are pickleball courts on 2 tennis courts.
there's 4 pickleball courts?
That's how he had it drawn. I'm led to understand from the public comments that we've gotten that that is not realistic. So, I don't know what to do with that. That's on you guys. The last thing that I wanted to mention, which never would have come up had our water issue not arisen, is that there are times, very infrequently, that the water tower has to be completely drained, and it drains into the park. And so, one more reason that area out there needs to be kept free from a lot of structure and equipment, because that can be damaging. So, another thing just to keep in your mind as you think about what's going on out there is that we do need to accommodate for that when unfortunately it does happen. So I can answer any questions about anything that I just spoke about. And then I guess, Mike, I would just hand it to you to start the discussion however you see fit.
Does anybody have any questions for Christina?
I have some comments, but I know we have 2 people back here that want to make some comments too, so I'll hold my comment, Mike, and I
Do
don't
we
know
have a
what
hearing
the
scheduled for
proper
public comment?
procedure is, so.
So we don't need to accept public comment? Or we can-
We will have a public hearing once we've
Right.
finalized the design,
Okay.
but I think it's up to you whether or not you
Okay.
take comment tonight.
if we've been asking for comments online and everything, it seems.
No, I just,
you know,
okay,
I'm-
no, I've got
Yeah,
this. Okay.
but you're
So-
right,
so
it's
time out.
disappeared from our.
Okay, so I want to go back to the approval of the meeting agenda. And the reason is I believe we need to edit the agenda now. And we need to add an item, and let's add it as item number 6.5, so 6.5. And I would like that item to read public comment.
I'll second
All in favor?
Aye.
that.
Perfect, okay. Okay, so that brings us, I don't think we need to have a discussion on what Christina presented at this moment. We'll open up it for public comment and see what we get from them. So our next agenda item would be our staff report.
So you're not deliberating this tonight?
Wait a minute, yeah, no, we probably should have made that 5.5.
Okay, okay, all right, let's make it 5.5. Thank you. Okay. So that brings us to action item number 5.5, which we just voted on to be public comment. And I see we have a couple of people in line here to make public comment. So before we get started, we need to read the public comment rules. I know that the big one is you're limited to 3 minutes.
You're ready to go.
And did
If you can just-
well, no, time out. Hold on.
I'm not in a hurry.
No,
I thought you were asking me.
time out. We have to do it properly.
Yeah.
So did we have a sign-in sheet for public comment?
No.
Okay.
I can go get one.
Probably should do so we make it a matter of record.
Yeah, right, I can just write down the name.
Well, we can make it a matter of record just on the recording.
Okay. All right, so it looks like we have 2 individuals who'd like to make public comment. We're doing this kind of just off the cuff, so I do know that your time is limited to 3 minutes, so whoever would like to go first, please come up to the mic, make sure the mic's on, introduce yourself and address.
Hi, my name's Hap Gotzian. I'm 8901 South Riverway. Hi, Jay. Jay and I have known each other for years. I'm just here on behalf of a proponent for pickleball, and just brief history. Jay knows I've been a long time high-level competitive tennis player, so I'm a big fan of tennis. But if you go around town, tennis at public places is dying. And we've got 8 beautiful tennis courts over at West Valley High School that never get used in the summer. I'm over there quite a bit. And I shouldn't say never, but it's really rare that there's people using those in the summer. Pickleball is the hottest sport in the country. We've got this, I love this plan. It's fantastic. I love our park. I love Millwood. We've got an opportunity to capture something special with pickleball here because Spokane, with the amazing parks it has, is in woeful need of excellent pickleball courts. There just aren't any in the whole city of Spokane. There's some on 61st, but they're made out of concrete and hardly anybody uses them because they're made out of concrete. So if you go to Post Falls, you go to Coeur d'Alene, they're killing it over there with great pickleball facilities, and Spokane doesn't have any. So Millwood could kind of put itself on the map with a great pickleball facility. And with just a little more room than 1 tennis court, you can get 4 excellent pickleball courts. So anyway, big fan of pickleball. Pickleball's been in high use here. They've painted lines on the tennis courts over there for pickleball. Those get used. But 1 pickleball court on 1 tennis court is not a great situation because you're constantly chasing the balls because the pickleball court's so much smaller than a tennis court. So anyway, just want to highly encourage you to give a good nod to pickleball. It can set Millwood apart. This guy is my friend Daryl, and he happens to be a total pickleball expert on a national level. He works for Selkirk Pickleball, which is the #1 pickleball paddle company in the world. They're in Hayden Lake, Idaho. It's all these, we got the #1 pickleball player in the world lives in Hayden Lake, Idaho. The #3 girls player in the world lives in Spokane. So it's a hot sport for this area. Daryl's traveled all over the country to pickleball tournaments. He just got back from nationals in Palm Springs. So we've got a guy right here that if anybody wants to ask him questions, he's got the answers. He's seen facilities all over the country. So we're fortunate that way. I'm just here to encourage you
10
on the
seconds.
pickleball front. So thanks.
Thank you. Please, your name, introduce yourself and your address,
My name
and
is
your
Daryl
time
Knapp.
starts now.
Oh, sorry. My name's Daryl Knapp. I used to live on Bridgeport, 8521 East Bridgeport. I now live in McIntosh Court, just up the road. I actually started pickleball here. I got permission from the Parks Department years ago to put tape on the courts, and I would come down every day before we would play and tape the courts. And to my surprise, one day I came down and the Parks Department had actually painted lines for me, which almost made me cry because it was a pain taping them. Like Hap said, I work for Selkirk Sport, one of the largest manufacturers in the whole country. I do sales in 35 states and all of our international accounts. So I can tell you right now, the pulse of pickleball is about ready to explode. They predict right now that there are 6 million players, and by 2030 they're looking at 40 million players. So it's not a fad; it's something that we need to be ahead of. And like Hap said, there's tennis courts all over the city, but there's not good options for us to play outdoors. If we want to play outdoors, we have to go to Post Falls or Coeur d'Alene. And I'll be honest, I play all summer long inside at North Park Athletic Club because there's no good places to play. And here it used to be phenomenal, and it still is. But the problem is there's such a good little program going now that your pickleball courts are busy a lot. And if you had permanent courts where they were actually sized properly, I can promise you they're going to be so busy. It's going to be a unique little spot. And like, I love the fact that with the 8 courts, 8's awesome. If you can do 8 is phenomenal. We need a place to have 8 courts. And I like the fact that you're going to change them north-south. North-south is a huge deal for any rackets, for pickleball or tennis. It has to go north-south. But like I said, I'm willing to leave you all my contact information. I have oodles of experience as far as what's going on. And it would be so cool to see Millwood be ahead of Spokane Valley, because they get, I've gone to their meetings, they get it, but they don't. They have tennis players are putting up a huge stink, which is, like Hap said, is kind of crazy because everywhere you go, there's empty tennis courts everywhere. But please reach out to me because I'll give you any kind of information you want.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so based on the bio that he presented on you, you consider yourself a pickleball expert. So my question to you would be, how many pickleball courts can you safely put on a tennis court?
If you have regulation-sized tennis courts, you can do 4.
You can do 4
You can do
safely.
4 safely.
Okay.
Obviously, there are better ways to do it if you're willing to put a little bit more into it. I don't know if you've ever been to the courts in Coeur d'Alene. What's the name of the park? Memorial Park in Coeur d'Alene. They've done a phenomenal job with it's perfect as far as fencing and whatnot. A big draw for pickleball is actually to have individually fenced courts. They don't have to be super high courts. They can even be 4-foot high courts, but that what keeps the ball in one little area. And if you, like, people were asking for like seating areas and all of that. That's not necessarily necessary. It's nice, but we can bring chairs and sit. But having putting a little bit of extra thought and time into making the pickleball feel unique, these courts will be busy. And like I said, in the next few years, it's going to be a big deal.
Okay, so then I do have another follow-up question on your growth predictions. Okay, so I remember pickleball, when pickleball first came here in 1977, 78, okay? Never heard, I personally, and I'm a huge sports fan, never heard of pickleball until a year ago.
Yep.
Again. So was there a steady increase? What's the big draw? There's got to be something.
Okay, so I've been with Selkirk Sport now. I've been working for them for 4 years. I've been a sponsored player with them for 10. So I've seen what's been going on for a long time. And up until last year, the pickleball companies were the ones that were kind of doing all of the groundwork to grow the sport. In the last year, it's on ABC Sports, ESPN. I mean, and now you're having LeBron James and Kevin Durant and all of these guys buy these Major League Pickleball teams. It's becoming a mainstream sport. It's on TV shows. It's on game shows. It's finally hit mainstream media. And that's why they project from 6 million to 40 million players in the next few years. It's finally, there's money in the sport too. So young tennis players who aren't making it in tennis are now transitioning into pickleball. When I started back, like it used to be a senior sport. I go to tournaments and I was the young gun. I'm actually looking forward in January, I can start playing in the senior division, and I'm super ecstatic because the young people come to the sport's ridiculous.
Were you just at the Nationals?
I
in
was.
Palm Springs?
I was down
I was
there.
last year.
It's huge. And the growth from even last year to this year at Palm Springs at national tournament, it's phenomenal to see the growth. Next year they're saying that you know where Indian Wells Tennis Center is? So they hold the BNP Paribas tournament there. Next year, they're actually going to let us use one of the main stadiums to host that will be the championship court. So it's growing. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Since we have an expert pickleball at the podium right now, does anybody have any questions for him? Commissioner Rickard?
And just to clarify, because I'm a little slow on the uptake sometimes. When you asked how many pickleball courts can go on 2 tennis courts, were we talking about coexisting or in place of?
I just was asking a general question, because I wanted to know. I wanted to get kind of an idea of how large a pickleball court is. And his answer was you can fit 2 pickleball courts on a regulation-sized tennis court.
Footprint,
In the footprint, right.
Four
okay.
pickleball courts.
4 pickleballs
So-
on one regulation?
Yeah, on a USTA, is that how you would say it? A
Right, okay,
USTA
okay,
regulation court.
okay.
Now, bear in mind, if you had 8 pickleball courts, but they were on 2 tennis courts, and someone was playing tennis, those other 4 courts would not be.
No, I understand that. I understand that. I just was
'Cause they're
looking for
outside
a
the
footprint
courts.
size.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I
Okay.
have, oh, do you have a
Commissioner
question?
I was just going to clarify, you said Memorial Courts in Coeur d'Alene has a good setup.
It's amazing.
Would it be worth making a field trip?
I would highly recommend it. Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls understand what's going on. In fact, most of their housing developments now that are going in, the builders won't even build unless there's gonna be pickleball, because that's the number one thing people are looking for when they're buying a house right now, is a development that's gonna have pickleball.
I'd hate to buy an apartment in a facility that has pickleball courts as loud as they are.
They are, but it's kind of the draw.
That's not gonna work.
Yeah,
And-
that's why this is perfect.
And let me just say this really quick, because I think this is the number one thing with pickleball that you don't get with any other sport, is we have kids through seniors playing on the same court at the same time. There's not a sport out there where you can get physical activity, all genders, all ages at one time. And in fact, the number one female player in the whole country right now is 15 years old. She's ridiculous. She's a phenom. But my point being, it's not just age specific, and everybody can play. We could all go out right now, well, not now, but we could all go out and have a good time. I can promise you, I could have all of us playing and having a good time within a very short period of time, which is another thing which is kind of cool with the sport, is it doesn't take much. A paddle and a ball. If you guys have the net set up, it's a paddle and a ball. So, thank you.
Any other commissioner questions?
Full address, please, for the
Yep.
record.
Yep.
Your address,
5102
5102
North McIntosh Court.
North Main.
Yep.
Commissioner Beazey?
Yeah, I want to go back to that same question. So you've got one regulation court. We got this note saying it's not a good idea to try to cram a bunch on a tennis court and still expect to play tennis on
You
it.
c-
So are
that's
you
correct.
talking about like you could fit 4 in the same footprint, but they wouldn't coexist really?
They could not coexist.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And you see it all the time. Obviously, spacing is very important, and if you do it correctly, the better the spacing, the more apt people are to come play. You start slamming them on just to try to get courts, it's not a good idea. I would rather see less courts done correctly than more courts done incorrectly.
So I had a really intelligent question, and now I don't remember what it was, but thank you for your time.
Yes.
Thank you.
What was
Anybody?
your name again?
I'm Daryl.
Darryl.
Yep.
Thank you for that information.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, good.
So you can't see here, but on the other side of that board, it shows what I was led to believe was 2 tennis courts, but rather than tennis, they're showing the pickleball configuration.
Yes.
Then I got some comments that made it seem like the 4 per court, not only was it just not advisable because you have tennis going on and then, but that it just really wouldn't work. You're telling me that it would work with 4.
So let's say that with this picture right here, you have 2 tennis courts side by
Right.
side. If people were playing tennis on where the 4 courts would be, to be honest with you, only the 2.
No, what I'm saying is, so we have pictured 2 tennis courts, right? If we had this tennis court completely devoted to tennis, how many usable courts for pickleball could we get over here?
If you spaced it right, you would have 4.
And that would be workable.
Yes, but I would look at if you were able to make it spacing just a little bit bigger to make it a little bit better. But yes, you can.
Okay.
And
That's
it'd
what
be,
I,
just to clarify, it'd be the width. You just need to add a little width.
Width, not length, just width.
But
okay.
the tennis courts here are very gracious in space. So, I mean, you could easily do 4 on one tennis court
So-
here. 'cause
Okay.
There's gracious
So-
space there.
So when I say 4 tennis, or 4 pickleball courts, let's say this is the tennis court.
Uh-huh.
The pickleball courts come outside like this.
Okay.
They're not inside of the tennis court. They come outside the boundaries like that.
Okay.
But yes.
So maybe our,
I did that at one time when I taped it. I actually did 2 courts. I did one on either side of the net, and we would bring our own net. So the spacing was done properly, but the bad thing with that is, I mean, I have my own net, so it's not a big deal for me. But
Right.
if you're trying to make it something where the community can come use, you have to have a net system. You can't
which I
expect-
think is only going to be possible if we do kind of what's being talked about, which is dedicated
Right.
pickleball courts. And I think, I mean, we are sort of tight on space, but I think we've probably got enough space with that tennis court shifted north-south that we could add to make it a little bit wider, like they were saying.
What-
I think it's probably doable.
What would be awesome, just putting it out there, if you had one dedicated tennis court
Yeah.
and made a space for 6 dedicated pickleball, so it was together but separate.
Yes.
Six courts would be awesome, especially if you go look at what they did in Post Fall, or excuse me, Coeur d'Alene, and kind of get that kind of an idea. It's really good.
Then we don't have to worry about switching out nets.
Nope, you don't want.
Yeah, 'cause that's not gonna be practical.
You don't want to do that,
No.
because a pickleball net is so much smaller, not just in height, but in length, and it's not even feasible to be changing them out. So,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Daryl, are the pickleball courts at North Park, regulation size pickleball courts?
yes.
Okay.
And you saw, so the room that has the 4 courts, that was 1 tennis court.
Oh, I know.
So that's,
I've been a member there for
yeah,
years.
so that, I mean,
Used to play on it.
nice. So that's kind of exactly the spacing that you're creating with one
Okay.
tennis
I
court.
was just curious as to whether they, because they put it on court number 2, if it was regulation-sized pickleball courts, or if they squeezed it in.
Nope,
to
it's,
equal-
they're good. Yeah, you don't want to skimp on proper sizing. It's a big deal with pickleball.
Okay.
Daryl, do you have a card or something you can leave with us so that,
Maybe.
okay,
I cleaned out all my stuff when I came back from nationals. I will,
okay.
I'm not gonna die to his house, I'm not gonna.
but I'm, like I said, I'll give you my phone number. Please feel free to reach out, because I've seen a lot of places do it wrong, and those courts don't get utilized like they could. I had another thing that was on my mind too, but
Well, I think you'd be a great resource, and I think we should consider that, and talk to the people that designed the entire park, and make sure that we talk to Daryl and.
Yeah, I agree, I think
Give them Daryl's phone number.
Yes.
Our landscape
So I would ask you to, if you can work it into your schedule to watch our agenda items and see when our public comment, or I mean, when we actually have the hearing on this.
okay.
Because I think your testimony would be very valuable.
And feel free to, I'll leave my phone number, but if you would reach out even, and hopefully I'm around. They send me out a lot, so,
Great, perfect, great.
but, yep.
Great, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'm very, I'm very glad that we did that. Okay, so now we are able to open up this discussion to deliberate a little bit on this.
Can I make one comment before you deliberate?
No,
Joe.
the chair recognizes Christina.
I wanted to just let you know, I intended to bring this up in my comments, but I think that it will aid in your discussion. We do not have any comprehensive plan amendment applications this year. So that frees you up for another 1 to 2 meetings where we would have been otherwise occupied, gives you a little bit longer to discuss. So just so you know.
Perfect, great, thank you for that. Okay, so why don't we just start the discussion? Let's talk about the question number 3. the results there, which is what we just talked about, tennis courts, pickleball courts, basketball courts. I'll start the discussion. I think it's a no-brainer at this time that we need to seriously consider having pickleball courts in the city of Millwood Park.
Oh, I agree.
You know, I mean, just in looking from, you know, the last couple meetings where the public comments that we're getting all are about pickleball, based on an industry expert who just testified that the growth of this is gonna be amazing. On the flip side, though, I mean, I wanna remind everybody what Christina has been saying all along, that we are not going to become a pickleball facility. So that's something that we need to take in mind. I'll be honest, I like the idea of, and I got it. I mean, we want to try to accommodate everybody. I want to try, based on this, we want to try to accommodate tennis players, pickleball players, and basketball players. So I like the idea of a separate tennis court that's dedicated to tennis. And then based on, of course, now, you notice that the one thing that he whipped in there real quick, he went from 4 to 6 real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, but if a regulation size tennis court can add 4 pickleball courts and have that dedicated as 4 pickleball courts, I think that might be something that we may want to consider. Commissioner
So,
Wood.
as a community member myself, spent a lot of summer nights playing pickleball over the park, and they're often full. So having 6 courts over there actually would be really awesome. We could draw a lot of people to our little park and to our little community right here. Families can come play pickleball. We played from my parents to myself, aunts and uncles, kids play. We can all play together. It's a family sport. And then we enjoy, you know, a little city of Millwood together afterwards. I think that could be a good draw for a lot of people and a lot of families. And honestly, we use the trail system too to go to the park, so it's just been super nice. I think 6 courts would be good. I don't ever see anybody playing tennis. You guys?
Well, one of the problems with, one of the reasons you're not seeing anybody playing tennis, because my kids and grandkids play tennis. But they always go to the high school because the tennis courts here are usually full, because the pickleball players are using them.
And
If
they're
you
not-
had a dedicated one, you might have more people using it, just because you could have a better, if we had 6 pickleballs and a dedicated tennis, you'd have a higher chance of having that be empty after you
Do
walked
we
all the
want-
way to the park.
Do we want to draw more people to the park just for tennis if they can have it at the high school? Because they have a lot of really nice
Well,
courts.
So I didn't want to bring that up while they were here, but we talked about that last time. We cannot consider the high school's tennis courts
Can't.
as a consideration. And I will say this, I've talked with our park staff. Pickleball is very popular, but we do still have people who play tennis.
Right.
And so, and again, I mean, I want to be tactful here. We're not equipped to be a facility. It really is a park for our residents. If it brings other people in, that's great. But I do still think that we have a solid base of tennis players in Millwood. I think it would be a mistake to eliminate it altogether. But I also think you can't argue with what the statistics that he was, and with our park staff. They're in the park every single day. They know who's doing what, so. And we do too in the office, because we get the calls from the tennis players tattling on the pickleball players and vice versa. And can't you make them take turns? And it's like we're running a daycare. So, you know,
Do we have a limit on how big we can make our court? Do we have a size limit? Cap?
We talked last meeting about, they thought they could fit like the area of a 3rd tennis court in, which would give us 6 pickleball courts and 1 tennis court. If
I thought that the 3rd court we were adding though was going to be basketball. Isn't that what we talked about?
We talked about a lot of things.
We did.
And
We
we
talked
came to
about-
no conclusions.
No, we didn't. But as I said, I think that this indicates that that needs to be a consideration too. I mean, there's
Oh,
a.
absolutely.
So I think my understanding when we left the meeting last time was that the court would be repositioned north-south, and then on the south end, we would add a court going the other way that would be for basketball. That was what I left here feeling like was probably what we were going to do. But having said that, I don't know why, it seems like there's enough room over there that we could still add to the east or west side a bit to accommodate more. I don't know why we couldn't do that with the space that we have.
I think we should present it to our landscape architect.
Yes.
We'd like to see this, is it possible?
And that's what I will do.
I agree
Once,
about it, yeah.
once we land on what exactly we think we want to do, then I will reach out to him, and then I will have him come back with that plan to talk to you all and talk it out, so.
Okay. Anybody have any other further discussion on the tennis court, pickleball court, and basketball court? I think we made a decision that well, at least we've had some vibrant discussion about that we think all three are important.
Yeah, basketball, I think, is really important, and that it did so well on your thing is interesting because the age group that uses it is not answering surveys online.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a
So
good point.
Either their parents are answering for them, or there's just a lot of general interest out there.
Right. Yeah, I was very surprised by that result.
Well, I want to comment on the tennis and pickleball. You can get 4 pickleball courts to a tennis court. He talked about 6, but I'm thinking if we have a dedicated tennis court, it could also, at times, have 4 more pickleball courts, not just 2, but we'd have a total of 8. But again, it would depend on the use of the tennis. And I think, having been into Hawaii a number of years, 2 years ago in Hawaii, they had an international pickleball tournament. And they took 6 tennis courts and made 24 pickleball courts. And they did it with tape, like Darryl mentioned. But you can get a lot of pickleball courts to a couple of tennis courts. And so I think if we had one dedicated pickleball court and then a tennis court that could be, and I don't know if Hap or Darryl mentioned that there's a lot, or maybe it was, what's her name? Didn't mean to disparage her.
Shannon.
Shannon, that the lines, when you're playing tennis, and the tennis lines are white, and the pickleball lines are black, you don't notice the black lines of the pickleball court. I mean, you just, of course, I'm a tennis player, so I'm gonna stick up for that. And I can't comment on the condition of the tennis courts, but I used to play over there, but the condition got so poor and went downhill that I started using West Valley as well.
So we did resurface them
Okay.
last year,
Okay,
but,
I haven't been there.
but as I mentioned at our last meeting, Paul told me that they have, they're at the end of their life, sorry. I was fascinated by what he was saying about there being legitimately 4 courts on a tennis court, based specifically on what she had said, which was, that's not a good idea.
I think she's talking, it's not a good idea to try to have them both there at the same time.
Oh, maybe.
Not that they wouldn't fit in the same footprint, that's a different.
Okay, well, maybe I misunderstood what she was saying. Just to keep in mind to everybody in the community, whoever comes here, this isn't a country club setup where we're going to have benches and water and attendance. It's a public park facility, and so you can't expect to have all of the bells and whistles. I don't think that you might get somewhere else. And I think you all know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I've kind of got that feeling with some of the comments that we've gotten, that they're looking for a more elevated experience than maybe what we would.
I don't think we need to, I agree, we don't need to provide that.
And like he said, they can bring their lawn chairs and do whatever, so.
I think that she especially was letting us into the world of pickleball. And there are places, especially in the southwest, where they have these things set up. And apparently there's a code about how you turn your racket when you set it on the bench as to whether you want to play the winner of the next match or whether you're waiting for your turn or, you know, it's like the language of flowers in the old days or something. So it is its own world, and it's good for us to be aware of that as we're thinking about this.
We've talked about, I think Daryl is just a tremendous resource, and we need to get him in touch with our park designer.
I think so.
Yeah.
And see what they could do.
Yeah,
What could they come
exactly.
up with?
Right.
I'd agree with that. And as far as the facility, I don't know, Christina, after listening to everybody, the Millwood Invitational kind of has a nice ring to it.
I think we definitely need some benches.
If you think I'm gonna be out there with towels and stuff, you're the one.
Okay. Any further discussion on that particular item? Okay, perfect. Let's see if we can have a little discussion on the idea for the theme. I think Christina did point out in my scanning of it, railroad seems to be very, very popular.
It is, but given how obvious it is, I am amazed at the number of rivers that came up. Because nobody put river in their head, they came up with that on their own, whereas,
Yeah.
you know, railroad is. I am concerned, there is one railroad here that says Old Railroad Connection to Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, which is the electric railroad.
I don't,
And, you know, I don't know, I think it needs to be electric railroad, not
yeah, I don't wanna
Jim
see,
Hill
I don't
days.
wanna see like Western Railroad
Yeah.
type theme, that's not really
We're
Spokane.
not Hilliard, we're Millwood, and there was a difference in our railroads and difference in the way the town was related to the railroad.
Good input.
Does anybody else have any thoughts or ideas?
Mike, I'd like to step away for just a moment. I have something on my desk that I would like to show the commission. So
Okay,
I'll
no
be
problem, okay, so,
I think it would be neat to kind of like maybe showcase what types of, like if we do like river themed, like what type of fish we used to have running up our rivers here would be kind of neat. Showcase that.
the red band
It's
trout,
Sort of an educational thing like you
Salmon.
see.
Yeah.
We had actual salmon in the river.
Yeah.
Up to, yeah.
That would go nicely with this comment number 9 about native lands.
I found that comment pretty interesting. I thought that somebody put some really deep thought into that.
Put that with the river and you could have something. You could say the fish, maybe natural plants or something. That would be educational, not just for the kids playing on the play gear, but for all ages.
Well, it could incorporate both themes really, because it really does encompass Millwood, the railroad and the river kind of go together here.
I don't know why we couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
A couple of weeks ago, I came into this on my desk, and I don't know why it was put on my desk, but I was really fascinated by it.
There's an ad playing on TV. That
Really?
has this merry-go-round in it, and it's got a modern surface under it, so somebody
Yeah.
somewhere in a park is using a good old-fashioned merry-go-round currently.
So I flipped through it, and I just thought, especially in light of the fact that we're not under such a time crunch, that maybe some of you would like to just leaf through this or pass it around. And the amount of stuff, like, I'll fess up. Number 22 at the bottom, pirates, that was my daughter.
Oh.
But they have a pirate ship in here you know, so I'll hand it around and you guys can do with it what you want, but there was so much cool stuff beyond what even I was aware of. So it might be helpful in the discussion or kind of give you an idea of what they can do. And maybe you want to bring, yeah, I don't know what you want to do, but I thought it was interesting.
They probably have a website I can check out.
Yeah, that would be useful.
Okay.
Give us the website.
Any of you guys can look at that?
Sir?
Yeah. Okay. So Christina, what would you like us to do on this? Would you like us to like pare this down to like maybe 2 or 3 different ideas for consideration, or it sounds like one of the consensus is if there's a way we can do a railroad / river theme.
I wonder-
Including native plants and
Okay, right.
this thing about the native lands and stuff.
I wonder about that. Remember when the consultant was talking to us at the farmer's market about that poured rubber surface, kind of the highest end? I wonder, if they poured a river, you know what I mean? Like, as part of the
Right.
play surface, the river was incorporated. I think maybe that's the best way, is to maybe narrow it down. And then maybe go back to Ken and say, find us some specific ideas around railroad and river, or something like that. I know years ago, it was a different sort of a idea. I don't think they're doing it, well, I'm sure they're not doing it now, but when they were planning Spokane Valley City Hall and the library was going to be across the street, the architect or designer or whatever had planned this really cool river feature that was like inlaid in the floor, and it would go through the lobby of City Hall and then out and across the street to where the library was going to be. It was really a cool idea. Of course, it was the first to get the chop when the budget came in. But I wonder if that would be something that we could do with our play surface, is make the river.
There's tons of like natural resources type themes
Uh-huh.
in here, which would
Yeah.
be super cool. Like they've got like log themes, different fish, mushrooms, logs.
Kids
like,
these
cool
days,
stuff.
when I was a kid, I crawled through old cement sewer pipes out in the back of the park. I don't understand all this newfangled. Paul and I were talking about that the other day. He said, did you ever crawl through those sewer pipes that were out there? I said, oh yeah, I
They're not
love
still
those
there?
things. I don't think so, no.
They're
My
not?
grandkids were crawling through them. That's not too long ago.
So just to, because Bobby brought up that number 9, the native lands, and that kind of intrigued me when I read that. And I know this is a bit of a reach, we're not here talking about that, but is that something that could be maybe incorporated into the Arboretum? I don't know what the plan is for that, but I mean,
Well-
native species, that'd be a,
Let me give you a
Perfect place.
quick education on the Arboretum.
Okay.
It doesn't belong to us,
enough said.
and nobody asked any permission. The mayor at the time just told them to go plant some trees, and they did it.
Well, I understood that they did ask the railroad. And the railroad, I mean, not anything in writing, they just went and asked the railroad, and the railroad said, well, it's your land, it's our land. If you want to plant something on it, fine, but be ready to lose it if we want to dig it up. And Millwood said, okay.
That's not what I got from Paul. I don't
Well,
know.
that's the story I got at the time.
So, yeah, I don't think we're probably into investing anymore out there.
Okay, no problem, enough said.
But we've got the trail.
Right.
And I think there are some native type plants on the trail, maybe we could label them or something. You know,
Sure.
extend our theme that way, because some of those are dryland plants.
Yeah, they are.
So I guess so we can maybe have a little bit of I like the fact that we have no comp plan, things we gotta deal with this year, so that gives us a little time. So maybe we can start thinking about, with the brochure that's going around, looking at that for different things, and kind of looking at, okay, hey, we're looking at a railroad / river, and the native lands with some native, natural stuff. I mean, that would kind of pare it down to maybe three ideas for us to kind of research a little bit.
Yeah, I think the native lands and river kind of is one.
Yeah, I do
think
too.
that,
Kind of
whether it's fish or something,
Okay.
fish,
plants,
native,
Yeah.
yeah,
native
native
plants.
plants,
Okay.
all of that would just
So,
go nicely.
Yeah.
Just FYI, the Kalispell tribe, in their career training program based up in Usk, they make all kinds of really neat metal fish things,
Oh.
salmon and things like that. And I've got a real good connection there. So, I mean, if you were looking for, structures and stuff like that, they make some really cool stuff.
That would be nice.
I have,
KMP, Kalispell Metal Products.
I have wanted to do public art for a long time.
Okay.
That's very interesting to me. I will
Okay.
keep that in mind.
So if you're out and about and you go by my house, all the little metal fish I have in my flower beds and frogs and bears and stuff, that, they
That's
make
where
that
they
stuff.
came from?
Yeah, so,
Interesting.
cool,
Okay.
all right. Oh, let's see, and I think as far as question number 1 on the water feature, I think right now we just, I don't know if we need to have a really big discussion on that, because I think right now the plan is still to have both. And is that not in the plan? Or not?
I think having a pool is going to be a
Stretch?
hard push,
Right,
yeah.
Okay. And I believe when we talked about that, had to do with some insurance reasons.
Yeah,
too.
our insurance company
Insurance
wants it
and
gone,
And
and the lifeguard
and the
issue,
lifeguard.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and the splash pad wouldn't require that?
No.
Okay.
Just some additional expenses that we're looking long-term. You're right, we need to take all those things into consideration. The waiting pool is nice, but 10 years from now, what's going to be, our liability?
Right.
And like you said, we had a heck of a time staffing the waiting pool this year, so.
Well, I shouldn't say that because that's just speculation.
Was that a minimum wage job?
No?
Or
No,
was it?
they paid my kids $16.50
Yeah?
an hour.
Any benefits?
No.
Okay.
What a diet for-
And the reason I asked that, City of Spokane, part-time, comes with benefits. Or say part-time seasonal comes with benefits. I
Really?
was just curious, yeah.
That's interesting.
It's a pretty good gig. So, okay. Well, with that, any further discussion on the 3 questions that we had?
What were the 3 questions?
We had the water feature, the theme, and the tennis courts,
The survey
pickleball
questions,
courts.
Bobby?
So I think I'll get in contact with Ken.
With who? Hey, you guys,
Well, the result. we got-
Christina, I recognize Christina.
Yeah.
I will reach out to Ken, and I will ask him to reconfigure that tennis court to a tennis court for pickleball and a basketball, and switch it how we wanted it. And then I will also ask him to provide some either photos or something of leaning towards our theme. And then I'll either have him come to the next meeting or I'll bring it back at the next meeting so we can, because it sounds to me like from the tone of this discussion tonight, the pickleball, tennis, basketball is pretty well set. We want to accommodate all 3 of those. And our theme sounds like it's pretty well, we know that which way, kind of direction we want to go. So that would leave just the wading pool. And I could do a little research on what the issues are with the wading pool, a little deeper dive than what I've previously done.
Okay, I think that's a good plan. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. That brings us to agenda item number 6.
Question here.
Oh, Ruby.
I have a question about basketball courts.
Okay.
This keeps occurring to me, and then of course I forget it before I get a chance to actually ask. When we say basketball courts, or basketball courts, what are we talking about? Because a basketball court, like in a gymnasium, is a pretty large thing. Or are we talking about like Hoop Fest 3-on-3 type courts that are much smaller?
I don't know how, because I don't know dimensions and stuff, I couldn't say. I do know that we have gotten negative feedback on the small courts we have out there now, but I don't even think they're Hoop Fest size, because they're not as wide as a, so I don't, but they're also well-used. So people like to go shoot hoops, and they don't need a regulation court, so I don't know the answer to that. I would want to see what the landscape architect came up with, and I don't know if we'd prefer, I don't know. I don't know what it would look like.
I don't think there's any way we can justify full regulation basketball court. I think that's off the table. I'd be interested in what size Hoop Fest courts are, whether that's possible, or like you say, just what we have now, which are basically hoops with enough room to bounce the ball. that
Right.
Yeah.
Are used a lot with going to and from the market. There's usually somebody there shooting hoops.
I know they get a lot of play. You know, I would probably be in favor of maybe just a little bit larger, and if you can envision a basketball court like you see on TV, you know, have 2 3-point lines for each, have a 3-point line on each hoop, and then just maybe a center court line. So you just
You can
keeping
play
the,
like a little 3v3,
yeah,
4v4.
you're shrinking the court, but you're keeping the 3-point lines. So probably 3-point lines, what, 21 feet, so probably 45 feet long?
It's probably something standard they do.
Yeah, there's probably a standard something, so, but something to research.
I'll ask
Oh,
her.
oh, she's Googling it right now, so.
Pro 3-point lines aren't the same.
True.
So,
I think we would want college, high school if it's more.
Right.
We're not gonna have too many pros practicing out there.
probably.
No, you don't know that. Spokane's got a lot of pro basketball players,
This is true.
so,
Basketball City, USA.
Exactly. so.
Hoop City, that's what
Okay. Any other questions on what we just discussed? If not, we'll move to number 6, our staff report.
I have just a couple of things for you. The adoption of the budget is scheduled for the 13th of December council meeting. I mentioned to you, I think at your last meeting, that possibly we were going to be doing a holiday event. That is not going to happen. Everything sort of fell apart with the water. So, and then the snow, and so that's not going to happen. And then we had talked briefly at our last meeting about what we wanted to do in December. I will tell you that I will be on vacation the last week of December, so if we do have a meeting, we would have to move it. But because we don't have the comprehensive plan amendments, I know that years ago, it was just the practice of the commission not to have a December meeting. And so I would propose that maybe as something that we do this year. I don't know that we'll be able to do it every year, but with no comprehensive plan amendment applications, that kind of frees us up for that. You can talk about that during your comments. And then the last thing, I just wanted to touch base with you. You had questions about the other survey. What were those?
I was just wondering how you decided who received the survey.
So,
Because did the community, Millwood Community Association, anybody on board get it?
I did send it to their email address that they have listed on their website,
Okay.
and Shireen as well. So the way that I was directed to distribute it was to all electeds and appointeds. So that was you all, the council, historic preservation, and the tree and beautification board. And then 5 local businesses chosen at random, and 5 what they term citizens at large. And so that's how it was
Not a very
distributed.
big sample. You have 5 businesses and 5 residences.
I can't please you.
Well, I just, my email was kind of messed up. It kept showing me May was the last time you sent me anything. I knew that was wrong. Finally, I got in, got everything rebooted and found it, but of course it only had a week's viability. So it's gone, but I'm just wondering some of the which businesses got it, because, I know.
Well, in the school district, that was one too.
It seems like businesses in the downtown area are stakeholders, especially businesses that have been there for 30 years.
Who are you speaking to specifically? The corner bar?
Yeah. Who did not receive one either as a business in the historic business district for 30 years or as a board member of the community association.
Well, I don't know. I feel like any answer here I give is not going to be sufficient.
It just feels like there should have been more people asked. I mean, knowing there's just 10 people just doesn't seem like a very big sample.
So when this idea was first floated, the feedback that I got from staff and other people, including our attorney, was very negative. And talked about an arduous public process that would be years long. And it just was very negative. And I went through a branding logo process at Spokane Valley that was not that. And so I knew that there was a way to do it that didn't result in that. So, you know, this was what was handed down to me from the mayor. This is what he felt was a decent, I sent out 45 or 49 surveys. I got 30 responses. And I didn't send them out, they sent me the link, but the consultant has been handling them. So here's what I would say. I mean, it was randomly done.
How did you, what method did you use? Names and a hat, random number generator?
More like a finger in a map, sort of, for lack of a better description. I have the results. I got them today. And I don't think that you would get any better results or any different results from what we got. And I also think that 30 responses out of 49 is telling. And you might be able to sit there and say that the corner door would have responded, and you're probably right. But the participation that we get on things like that is never what you imagine it to be. And so I could have sent it out to 150 people and maybe not gotten any better turnout. So I think it was sent, I'm comfortable with the wide range of folks that it was sent to. I don't know who of them responded any more than to say it was 75% male and 25% female, which surprised me, but whatever. And like I said, I think that the results, I don't know how they use, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not an art person. Councilmember Kohler and I met with them today. I think that, and I'm not trying to be secretive, I have it on my desk, I can show you if you'd like. What they landed on was three main topics with drop down sort of. The first one was charming. I can't remember the second one, and the third one was business friendly. And then they had, characteristics under that, which I thought, I think that's pretty spot on. And then somehow they take that, and he said, well, now that we've settled on this, we'll go back and choose the correct fonts, and I don't know anything about that art stuff, so I don't know how they're going to use those survey questions, but you do what you can do.
Was there anywhere in the survey for colors?
No.
Because I could see the city saving a lot of money and a lot of trouble if they use what have become our colors, the blue of the river, the green of the trees, and the terracotta of all the brick buildings. If that's incorporated into it, then your entryway signs are still good. And a lot of the stuff we've done goes because those have become over time kind of our colors.
That wasn't a question that they asked, either in our conversations or in the survey. They are going to provide, as I understand it, a number of options. I'm hoping that they will be varied, and so yeah, no, that wasn't a question they asked. Is there any questions from any of you on the water situation that I need to answer?
I can make a comment.
Listen, Bonnie, I've been answering snowplow questions all day. You gotta go easy on me, girl.
Well, even if you don't like this, I think Paul will.
Okay.
It took a couple days they got blindsided, more or less. But I was really impressed by the last week and a half, how really good they were at keeping the website updated. This is what we've done, this is what we found out, this is where we're going from here. And even if they didn't have new news, you could tell they had put something new on there, so it was still active. I was, as a user of it, I was very pleased.
That was all her.
Thank you,
Well,
Christina.
see?
Yeah.
That was all her, yeah.
So
She's the website gal.
I wanted to say this. I was in charge of the website, and that was on me, so thank you for that. I'm glad that was helpful. We didn't know what we were doing. You know, they had been through it one time like 22 years ago. And so there were a couple of, you know, we had a meeting after it was all over to kind of debrief and figure out what we do different next time. So I do want to say this. The one thing that universally has been appreciated from the residents was the door-to-door notification that happened on the first day. And then on the back end, a lot of real unhappy folks that they didn't get a door-to-door notification when it was cleared up. You know, this isn't judgy. There's a complete lack of understanding on the part of Joe Citizen about what goes on down here or in any city and what kind of staff we have. And so we are putting together a special edition newsletter that will go out in your December bill that explains what happened, what we did, and all of those things. And in there is a call for, if you appreciated that and would be willing to help us in an emergency, to please call and leave your contact information. Because we had 4 guys in the pouring rain, snow. Oh, I don't even know if we had, yeah, we did, 4. Bryce and Daniel and Kyle and
Well,
Matt.
until I understand that Daniel was out because he had his baby.
Yeah, so that
Within
first,
all that, he was out for.
that first,
Yeah.
first day of getting out those notices was difficult, but very well appreciated from people. But it's also not something we're able to do anytime that something happens. So that was one thing. The other thing that was new was the reverse 911 system. We've never used that before and didn't really know how it worked. And so I think my phone dinged at 1:30 that day. It was a Friday. And immediately, all 3 lines lit up because the reverse 911 had our phone number. So it was Paul, me, and Lisa each on a phone. And you literally just answered the phone and then hit the button and answered it again and hit the button and answered it again until 4 o'clock that night. And the problem was that of the probably 300 calls we answered between the 3 of us, maybe 10 were residents. So apparently the way the reverse 911 works is it attaches to a cell tower, and then anytime a cell phone comes into range, it beeps. And even that's not true, because we have someone who called from Twin Falls, Idaho, and they hadn't been in Millwood that day. We have them as far north as Loon Lake, Barker, and here was the conversation, and Lisa can verify. Millwood City Hall, yeah, I just got your notice about I just got your reverse 911, and I'm right on the outskirts of Millwood. I don't know if I'm affected. What's your address? 222 North Barker. You're not on the outskirts of anything. You know, so we're talking to people at 57th and Regal who are saying, well, we're kind of close.
We stopped even, so it was like, City of Millwood, what's your address?
Yeah.
That's how it got to. That's what we had to do.
Everybody in Northwood thinks they live in Millwood. So finally Paul called, and the calls kept coming, and finally at like 3:30, this girl said, well, I just got the notice. I said, okay, listen, did you really just get it, or did you get it 2 hours ago and you're just now calling? She's like, no, my phone just dinged. So Paul had to call reverse 911 and say, quit, shut it down, you know. So the reverse 911 thing, we learned not to put our phone number on, and then also not to just let it run for hours on end. So that was something. So they had an inspector in the tower yesterday. We've got the vent replaced. That was the problem at the top of the tower. And then an inspector in there yesterday looking at the coatings on the inside. that wasn't part of the problem, but because it was empty, they flew in and looked at it, and there's a couple little spots at the top. I will tell you, I did go in the tower. I thought it was a once in a lifetime sort of a thing. It was very strange. But way up at the top, there were just these little areas of rust, and Paul said that they come from when it gets super cold and ice forms up there, and then the water, and it kind of scratches the coating. And so I think they're gonna touch those up, and then we'll bring the water tower back online, so.
Is it empty right now?
Yeah. It's very strange. It's much smaller when you get inside, like you stand outside of it and it looks so huge. And then you get in it and you go in through like a hatch,
Yeah.
like a porthole sort of a thing. And there was still ice on the bottom, so I had to wear these funny things on my shoes. But it feels much smaller when you're inside than it does when you're on the outside looking out. And then, you kind of have to tap and listen to the echo. And at first I thought, oh, I don't need to go in there. But then afterwards I felt like I'm glad I did.
Did you get to take your picture in there?
Oh, yeah, Paul and I both. Yeah,
You didn't, it didn't happen.
that's right. So anyway, and then of course, the other thing I say in the newsletter, but also just a big thank you to Safeway. Because and that was another thing that we would have done differently. We would have got on the water distribution right away. So,
What did you just say? You would have what?
got on the water distribution, distributing water to our residents.
water.
Oh, I see.
The free water. But Safeway was great. I called down there just one morning and they said, we'll give you everything that we don't need to run our store. And they did pallets of water and they were really great, so.
Now, the other thing, you had a link to, it took a little while to get there, but to the health department, the aid instructions. That was really good, and I know a lot of my friends could have used that information a little sooner. So that was a good
Well,
thing.
yeah, I thought maybe at the time could have put that in the initial,
Yeah,
but we didn't, we were just trying to
Well,
get it
yeah.
out so quick, we
Yeah.
didn't think about it. But
Yeah.
that would have been good to have in the initial.
something,
Time,
if
yes.
it were to happen again.
Yes, that
to
would have
them.
been,
I mean,
yeah.
just how can you bathe your baby in it?
Right.
Just
Yeah.
don't let them suck on the washcloth.
Yeah.
Just
And
simple
still,
little
listen, in the
things.
middle of our guys working 7 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day, I still got calls, are you gonna pick up my leaves? So, all the rest of city business has to go on. And then, of course, right when they got to leaves, then
It snowed.
Snow
this,
again,
so, yeah. So anyway, but I will say, by and large, 99% of the people who called here, very polite, very understanding. Even when we told them news that they didn't want to hear, is it still going on? Yes, they were all very, very nice. We had very few people threaten lawsuits, and that happens on a normal day anyway. So that's, that's just normal. So anyway,
I agree with Bobby, I think you did an amazing job.
Yeah.
thank you. I'll pass that along to the guys. They worked really
Yeah.
hard. And like I said, if you know of anyone or you yourselves would be willing in an emergency to come down and help us notify door to door, call Lisa and get set up on her list. And hopefully we never have to use it, but it'd sure be great to have more people helping us out if we did, so.
Sure.
Any questions for Christina? Great job. Okay. That brings us to commissioner remarks. I have a couple. When I was walking home, because I walked in the meeting, so except for today because of the snow, I walked by the park, and I don't know how new this is, but I noticed a new sign. Okay? And I don't ever remember that sign permit coming before the planning commission. And looking at the sign now, I get it, it belongs to the city of Millwood, but I believe in being a responsible entity, that the city should follow their own sign permits. And so I'm just curious how this came about.
This came about without any knowledge from me, this came about without me knowing about it.
Okay, good enough.
Now, having said that, I don't know the signage requirements in the public reserve zone, which is is that that's what that is. But yes, that was commissioned and installed, and I didn't know about it until it was done.
So what sort
What's
of
the
sign
sign?
is it?
It's a big sign that says City of Millwood Park. It's a beautiful sign, but,
But it's not set back.
well, it's a little bit bigger than 32 square feet.
Okay, so
Okay.
it should have come before us.
Oh, I think definitely it should have come before us. And, you know, I mean, I'm not gonna point fingers and say, well, who authorized this? Or how did this happen? But in my time on the commission, which has been nowheres near as long as you, but there's been some questionable things that have happened over the course of the last 5-6 years, that it's not, this isn't the Wild West. And,
Yeah.
and we, I mean, even though we're appointed, but as appointed officials and then our electeds, I think they need to be, you know, we need to be held to a higher standard.
Well, in the past, the city has been very careful to come to us with,
Right.
like when they put in the reader board,
Mhm.
that they made a special point of making sure they apply just like any other entity applying for a sign.
Who commissioned it then? You said somebody commissioned it.
We don't need to know who.
Yeah, I don't know.
We made the point that it
Okay.
really should have,
Okay.
Yeah,
should have followed procedure like
Right.
anything else. That's-
And to be honest with you, I think you're right. It didn't even cross my mind. I mean, when I found out about it, like I said, it was already pretty much erected. And to be honest with you, I never thought to say, you should have come to us. So I will pass that along. I know that it's not the Wild West. You should know that it really kind of often is. And it's not, I've never seen it in an intentional way. But really, I mean, and you made a comment about haven't been on the commission as long as Bobby. That was the other thing I was going to mention was Debbie came to me this week. She's being audited by the Department of Retirement Systems, and for some reason they had a list of folks they wanted to know when they first started on our boards. And you were on the list, and so were you. And so I had to do some real deep dives, real deep on Bobby. It was 2006 when she was first appointed. Yeah, I couldn't believe how far back it was. But, you know, I mean, I've probably told this story 100 times or told this little anecdote. My mom loved to refer to this as Mayberry. Mm-hmm. And really that's how it's been run. And so I think we're late to the realization that small town or not, we still have to toe the line and follow the rules. And so I will pass that on and try to compel them to bring that stuff to me more proactively because it should have come to you, so.
Thank you. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a firm believer in beg for forgiveness instead of asking for permission, but.
I am not. I am not.
You're trying to set an example.
Well, I mean, if we want to be the example.
Yeah, exactly.
And that kind of thing, so. And the other thing, I just wanted to compliment city staff again on the water tower. And then I'll own up, I kind of had a little snafu happen personally at my house with a driveway paving permit. And so I would like to say thank you to Lisa and the city of Millwood for getting us through that and having Kyle come over and set me straight. And for kudos to Kyle for coming over and being able to compromise with us and get us actually to what I really, really wanted. So it was good, so. I had thought, just FYI, so the commissioner, so I thought my paving contractor had purchased a permit, and they're in the process of grading my new driveway, and I get a nice little call from Lisa and saying, where's your permit? Anyway.
Good job.
Okay, perfect, so, cool. And the night was the first night I was able to run the snow blower on it, it's awesome. So, any other commissioner remarks? That brings us up to number 8, set the next meeting date. I would think that we should seriously consider Christina's request and not have a December meeting. Does anybody have any issues with that?
Not at all.
Not at all? Okay. So then that would make our next meeting date January 25th, 2023. And if nobody has any other things for the good of the order, I would hear a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Okay?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Everybody have a great holiday season.
You as
Jay,
well.
when are you leaving to Hawaii?
I won't be here for the January meeting.
Okay.